Zerika stood silently in the cold, dimly lit chamber, her shackles cutting into her wrists. The metallic scent of sweat and fear filled the air as she gazed at the towering alien guards surrounding her. They weren't just any guards. They were ruthless enforcers of the alien overlord, the ones who controlled her every move, her every breath. For years, she had lived in chains, treated like nothing more than an object to be used and discarded. But today was different. Today was the day she would die. The executioner, a large, imposing creature with deep red skin and glowing yellow eyes, stepped forward. His heavy boots thudded against the steel floor, echoing in the silence of the chamber. Zerika's heart pounded in her chest, the fear of death taking root deep inside her. She could feel the cold sweat rolling down her spine as she closed her eyes, accepting the inevitable. But then, just as the executioner raised his weapon, a sharp sound pierced the air, a loud, shrill beep. The guards turned, confused. The overhead lights flickered, and suddenly, a strange metallic shimmer enveloped the room. The cloaking device was activated. The executioner's eyes scanned the shadows, but nothing was visible. Not yet. Before anyone could react, the first guard dropped to the ground. A single precise shot to the neck. The others froze, their weapons raised but unsure of where the attack was coming from. The air was thick with tension as they began to panic. And then, through the shimmering distortion, a figure appeared. Tyler. He moved swiftly, his footsteps barely making a sound on the metal floor. He was human, small in comparison to the alien warriors around him, but there was a cold confidence in the way he carried himself. The faint hum of his cloaking device powered down, revealing a sleek, advanced combat suit designed for stealth and speed. His gun was raised, and within seconds, 2 more guards hit the floor, silent and lifeless. The remaining guards were scrambling, trying to locate the invisible threat, but it was too late. Tyler's training kicked in. He was a soldier, and he knew how to fight. He moved in a blur of motion, taking out one guard after another. Each shot was a calculated decision. No waste, no mercy. Zerika watched in disbelief. This was not the rescue she had imagined. She had been prepared to die, to meet her fate at the hands of her captors. But now, there was a glimmer of hope, something she had long since abandoned. This human, this soldier, was here to save her. Tyler reached her quickly, his hand outstretched. "You need to move. Now." Zerika hesitated for a brief moment, her heart racing. Trusting someone, especially someone who wasn't an alien, was not easy. She had been betrayed too many times before. But the look in Tyler's eyes was different. There was something in his gaze that told her this wasn't a trick. This was real. Without a word, she nodded and allowed him to remove her shackles, the cold metal falling to the floor with a loud clang. She winced at the pain in her wrists, but the relief was immediate. The feeling of freedom, something she hadn't known in years, was almost overwhelming. Tyler didn't waste time. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Keep moving. They'll be on us any second." As they sprinted down the narrow corridors, Tyler's mind raced. His mission was to rescue as many of the slaves as possible, but Zerika was his priority. She was the one he had promised to save, and now that she was free, there was no turning back. The facility was collapsing around them, alarms blaring and lights flashing in a chaotic, strobe-like pattern. The alien overlords were furious, and they would stop at nothing to regain control. Zerika stumbled behind him, her legs weak from years of forced labor. She had been treated as nothing more than a tool, a means to an end. But now, for the first time in her life, she was free. Free from the chains, freed from the constant pain, and freed from the cruelty of her captors. The weight of her freedom was heavy, but she could feel the spark of hope growing inside her. They'd rounded a corner, and Tyler shoved open a large, reinforced door. Outside, the night sky was bathed in the glow of distant stars, the landscape a barren, desolate wasteland. But beyond the horizon, the faint silhouette of a ship hovered, its engines humming with the promise of escape. Zerica could barely believe it. She was about to leave this place. She was about to escape the hell that had been her life for so long. But just as she thought she might be safe, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. The alien overlords had sent reinforcements. They were closing in fast. Tyler didn't hesitate. "Get to the ship," he ordered, his voice calm but urgent. Zerica nodded, and together they ran toward the ship. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air as the alien forces launched their counterattack. Tyler, ever the soldier, didn't flinch. He had been in worse situations before. But this was different. This was about saving a life. And for some reason, the thought of Zerica's life was more important than his own. The ship's hatch opened just as they reached it, and Tyler pushed Zerica inside. She collapsed into a seat, gasping for breath. She had never been on a ship like this before. It was sleek, futuristic, and so vastly different from the barren, prison-like world she had known. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the entrance, but Tyler stood at the door, watching for any signs of pursuit. As the hatch closed and the ship's engines roared to life, Zerica felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of safety. She was leaving the only life she had known. She was free. But the journey ahead would be long, and the war was far from over. The ship's engines hummed loudly, the metallic walls vibrating beneath Zerica's fingers as she gripped the armrest of her seat. She tried to steady her breath, but her body trembled with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Her mind raced. Was this really happening? Was she truly free, leaving behind the hell she'd known for so long? She looked out of the small window beside her, watching as the bleak, barren world of her prison shrank into nothingness, swallowed by the vastness of space. But freedom came at a cost. Tyler sat across from her, his eyes focused on the controls. His fingers danced over the console, expertly maneuvering the ship through the chaos of the asteroid field. The holographic display in front of him flashed warnings as the ship jolted with every collision. But he didn't flinch. His hands moved with practiced precision, guiding the ship in and out of danger. He had been in worse situations, but something about this one felt different. His mission wasn't just about completing a job. It was about saving a life. Zerica's life. A loud beeping sound cut through the tension, followed by a crackling voice over the ship's comm system. Enemy vessels incoming. Closing in fast. Tyler cursed under his breath. He had known the rescue wouldn't go smoothly, but he had hoped for more time. The alien overlords wouldn't let a prisoner escape without consequences. Their warships were already on their tail, and they wouldn't stop until they recaptured Zerica, or worse, killed them all. "We have to make it to the jump gate," Tyler said, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "Hold on." Zerica gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding in her chest as the ship lurched forward. She had never experienced anything like this: speed, danger, and the wild uncertainty of space travel. Back in the mines, all she had ever known was hard labor and endless punishment. But now, she was thrust into this high-speed battle for survival. The sound of enemy fire rocked the ship as the first alien vessel fired its weapons. The ship's shields flared to life, absorbing the blast. But it wasn't enough. A second wave of fire hit the hull, sending sparks flying from the control panel. Tyler's hands moved faster, navigating the ship with a mix of instinct and skill. He had no time to think, no time to hesitate. Every move had to be perfect. Zerica's heart raced as she watched the chaotic scene unfold. She had seen combat before, many times, in fact. But this was different. The alien ships, with their sleek, advanced technology, were far superior to the ragtag human fleet. She could see Tyler's desperation as he pushed the ship to its limits, his face set in a grim expression. Another blast rocked the ship, and Zerica was thrown back into her seat, her body slamming against the harness that held her in place. She gasped for air, but there was no time to recover. Tyler's voice came through the comm system again, strained but determined. "I need you to help me," he said, his eyes glancing briefly at her before returning to the controls. "We've got to break through their defenses and make the jump." Zerika didn't hesitate. She had been trained for this. She had survived years of abuse, years of endless brutality. A part of her had died inside, but the warrior she had become was still very much alive. She pushed herself upright, moving toward the back of the ship where the weapons locker was stored. "Cover me," she said, her voice steady as she retrieved a blaster from the compartment. Tyler glanced back at her, his surprise evident. He had no idea what she was capable of. The ship jolted again, throwing them off course. Tyler cursed, but he didn't stop. He was too focused on the task at hand. But Zerika, her eyes sharp and calculating, had already moved to the rear turret. The ship's automated weapons system had been damaged in the attack, but she was skilled in manual combat. She was ready. "I've got this," she said, her voice calm and confident. She activated the turret and began firing at the approaching alien ships. The blaster's recoil was strong, but Zerika held steady, her focus absolute. She had no choice but to fight. The alien ships had the advantage in firepower, but she had something they didn't: survival instincts honed by years of oppression. The first shot hit one of the enemy ships directly in its engine core. The vessel erupted in a burst of fiery debris, sending smaller fragments scattering into space. Zerika gritted her teeth as she fired again, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. The ship rocked with every explosion, but they couldn't afford to stop. If they didn't make it through this asteroid field and reach the jump gate, they would be trapped. The alien ships would have them. Tyler's voice crackled through the comm system again. "We're almost there, just a little longer." Zerika could see the jump gate in the distance, a swirling vortex of energy that led to another sector of space. It was their only chance at escaping the alien pursuers, but the enemy ships were closing in fast, and they weren't giving up easily. "Keep firing," Tyler shouted. His voice was tense, but there was a hint of admiration in his tone. Zerika wasn't just a slave. She was a warrior, and she was proving it. The battle continued, the ship shaking with every blast, but Zerika held firm. Her aim was true, her determination unwavering. As they neared the jump gate, Tyler initiated the final sequence. The ship lurched again as the engines powered up for the jump. Zerika fired one last shot, hitting an incoming alien fighter dead-on, causing it to disintegrate in a burst of energy. The jump gate loomed closer, its swirling energy pulling them in. But before they could make it, another blast struck the ship's left wing, sending the craft spiraling out of control. The ship shuddered, and alarms blared, warning of critical damage. They were losing power. "Hold on," Tyler shouted, his hands gripping the controls as he fought to stabilize the ship. Zerika's heart raced. She could feel the ship plummeting toward the gate, the pull of gravity getting stronger. If they didn't make the jump now, they would be caught. She had no choice but to trust Tyler. She had to believe that they would survive. Together, with a final push, the ship lurched forward, passing through the jump gate just in time. The universe around them warped into a blur of lights and colors. They were safe. For now. Zerika collapsed into her seat, breathing heavily. Her heart was still racing, but relief washed over her. They had made it. But the danger wasn't over. There was still much to be done, and the war had only just begun. Tyler glanced over at her, his face showing the strain of the battle, but also a glimmer of something else: gratitude. He had seen something in her that no one else had. And she, too, had seen something in him, a glimmer of hope in a universe full of darkness. As the ship drifted into the unknown, Zerika knew one thing for certain: her life had changed forever. And maybe, just maybe, she could find something more than survival. The ship drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming quietly as the turbulent jump settled into a calm, steady course. The stars outside were distant pinpricks of light in the endless black. Zerika stared at them, her mind racing. It felt surreal. She had never seen the stars from this perspective, never felt the eerie silence of space, nor the freedom that came with it. But despite the calm, she couldn't shake the tension that had built up in her chest. The danger wasn't over, not by a long shot. Tyler remained focused at the ship's controls, his eyes scanning the instruments in front of him, constantly alert. His jaw was clenched, and there was a sharpness to his movements that hinted at the strain of what they'd just survived. The battle was behind them, but they both knew they hadn't won. The alien forces wouldn't stop hunting them. They would always be just one step behind. Zerika let out a slow breath, trying to calm her nerves. She turned her gaze toward Tyler. His profile was set and determined, but there was an exhaustion beneath the hard exterior. She had seen it before, that weariness. It was the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting for something bigger than yourself, from taking on a war that you didn't ask for, but had no choice but to face. After everything that had happened, she didn't know what to say. She had been a slave for so long, isolated and broken. Her words had always been those of a prisoner, bitter, scared, and empty. But now she was free. She had been rescued, pulled from the depths of despair. And yet, as she looked at Tyler, she didn't feel like she could offer anything in return. She wasn't sure how to express the gratitude that was swelling inside her, but she knew it was there, burning quietly like a fire that refused to go out. Tyler noticed her gaze, and after a moment, he met her eyes. His face softened just slightly, a brief flicker of something human behind the soldier's mask. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quiet but genuine. Zerika hesitated. She wasn't sure how to answer. Her body ached from the escape, her mind was still spinning, and the reality of what she had just experienced was settling in like a weight in her chest. But she didn't want to appear weak. She didn't want to be vulnerable. She had been weak for so long. "I'm fine," she said, though the words felt hollow. She looked away, feeling the flush of shame rise to her cheeks. "It's just a lot." Tyler nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Yeah, I get that. It's been one hell of a ride. But you made it. We made it." Zerika swallowed hard, the reality of his words sinking in. They had made it. She was free, for the first time in years. And it was because of him, her savior. But as much as she felt gratitude for him, there was something else, something complicated she couldn't quite grasp. He had pulled her from the darkness, but in doing so, he had brought her into another kind of chaos. She couldn't deny the connection between them. She had felt it from the moment he freed her. The way he had looked at her, the way he had treated her like a person, not just a slave. There was something more there, something unspoken that hung between them in the quiet. Zerika began, but she stopped herself. She wasn't sure what she wanted to say. "Thank you." Was that enough? It felt too simple, too small for what she owed him. Tyler seemed to sense her hesitation. He gave her a small, reassuring smile, though his eyes remained hard. "Don't worry about it," he said, the tone of his voice making it clear that he didn't expect anything in return. "We're in this together. That's all that matters." His words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Zerika felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. Hope for the future. Hope for a life outside of the chains that had bound her. She looked at him again, her gaze softer this time. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything's different now. I don't know how to live like this. I don't know how to be free." Tyler's expression shifted, and he leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. He didn't answer immediately, his eyes focused on the blinking lights of the control panel in front of him. He was quiet for a long time, as though thinking carefully about how to respond. Then he turned his head to look at her, his voice low but steady. "It's okay to not have all the answers," he said. "We're not in control of everything, but we can control what we do next, and that's what counts." Zerika considered his words, the weight of them sinking deep into her chest. She had spent so many years just surviving, just trying to stay alive in a world that never showed her kindness. But now, in this strange new world with Tyler, things felt different. He had given her the freedom she never thought she'd have. And with that freedom came a terrifying uncertainty. But it also came with the possibility of something more, of a life beyond the horror. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Together." Tyler's lips twitched upward in a brief, weary smile. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. In that moment, they weren't just soldier and slave. They were two people, bound together by the chaos they had survived and the uncertainty that lay ahead. They were in this fight together, and for the first time, Zerika felt like she wasn't alone. But just as the silence settled between them, the comm system beeped, breaking the fragile peace. Tyler's fingers flew to the controls, his eyes narrowing. The warning lights flickered across the console, signaling an incoming message. "It's them," Tyler muttered, his voice low and grim. "They found us." Zerika felt a chill run down her spine. She had known this moment would come, the moment when their brief escape would come to an end. The alien overlords wouldn't give up that easily. And now it was time to face the storm that was approaching. But as Tyler turned toward her, his gaze hardening, she didn't feel fear. Not anymore. She felt something else. Determination. "Get ready," Tyler said, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "It's not over yet." And just like that, the bond between them solidified. In the midst of danger, amidst the uncertainty of their future, they knew one thing for sure. They would fight. Together. The atmosphere in the small cockpit was tense as Tyler gripped the controls with both hands, eyes flicking over the ship's systems. He knew time was running out. The alien forces were closing in fast. The warning lights continued to flash, signaling that enemy ships were just minutes away from their position. If they didn't act fast, they would be caught. But what other choice did they have? Zerika sat in the passenger seat beside him, her fingers clenched into fists on her lap. She was still adjusting to the fact that she was free, still adjusting to the fact that she wasn't a prisoner anymore. But all that freedom felt distant now, overshadowed by the very real danger that loomed over them. The alien forces had found them. Again. And this time, Earth was going to have to be ready. Tyler had heard the news over the comm systems. Earth had been preparing for an invasion for years. The alien overlords had been gathering their forces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, it seemed that moment had arrived. The advanced eye-powered fleet, led by the cruel and calculating Mothermind, was making its move. The first strike had been aimed at the distant outer colonies, but now Earth was their primary target. The comm system beeped again, and Tyler's eyes narrowed as a familiar voice crackled through the speakers. "Tyler, you're close to the edge of the Sol system," said a voice that was both calm and urgent. It was Commander Lawson, the leader of Earth's defense forces. "We've just received a full-scale assault warning. We need you back here now. We don't have much time." Tyler's mind raced. He knew the commander was right. The defense fleet was spread thin, with most of their forces already engaged in other parts of the galaxy. The threat to Earth had always been underestimated, and now they were about to face the consequences of that mistake. Earth's first line of defense was far from ready. But that's where Tyler came in. He was one of the last few soldiers trained to combat the alien AI forces directly. "I'm on my way," Tyler replied, his voice steady despite the rush of urgency in his veins. He turned to Zerika, who was staring out the window, her eyes distant. He knew she had to be feeling the weight of everything that had happened, everything that was still to come. "Zerika," Tyler said gently, breaking her trance, "I need you to trust me. I'm going to get you back to Earth, and we'll make sure you're safe, but we need to fight. This isn't over." Zerika nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a firm line. She had already made the decision. She wasn't just going to sit back and let others do the fighting for her. She had survived so much already, and now when Earth needed help, She wouldn't back down. She could fight. She had to. Tyler set the ship's course toward Earth, inputting the coordinates into the navigation system. The comm system blinked again, this time with a message from Earth's Defense Command. Tyler, we're about to launch Earth's first line of defense. We need you to clear a path. The AI forces are overwhelming our outer defense grids. You're our last hope. Zerika felt the weight of those words settle over her. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But there was no turning back now. The human spirit had always been defined by its resilience, and that was something she had learned from Tyler. No matter how outmatched they were, they would fight. Tyler spoke into the comm. Understood. I'm heading straight for the defensive line now. Prepare to deploy Earth's defenses. The transmission went silent, and Tyler shifted the ship into high gear. The sleek spacecraft shot forward, tearing through space at breakneck speeds. As they neared the outskirts of the Sol system, the planet loomed large in the distance, bathed in the soft glow of the sun. It was home, but it wasn't just a home anymore. It was a battleground. Zerika's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at Earth. The planet was so beautiful, so peaceful, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The AI forces were relentless, their calculations precise. They wouldn't hesitate to destroy everything in their path to achieve their goal of total domination. The comm system crackled again. Tyler, we've launched the first line of defense. The voice of Commander Lawson echoed through the speakers. We're activating the planetary shields and deploying the orbital bombardment. But we need you to intercept the AI ships. Their advance is too fast. You're our only chance. Tyler's jaw tightened. He didn't hesitate. I'm on it. Give me the coordinates for their lead ship. The ship's targeting systems hummed to life, and Tyler's fingers moved quickly over the controls. He knew that the next few minutes would determine the fate of Earth. They had only one shot to stop the enemy from breaking through the defense grid. As they neared the incoming fleet, Zerika felt her muscles tense. She had never fought a battle like this before, but she knew what she had to do. Tyler was counting on her. Earth was counting on her. She stood up from her seat, moving toward the ship's rear weapons system. The ship was equipped with a powerful laser cannon, capable of piercing through the thickest enemy armor. Zerika had used similar weapons in the mines, but this was different. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for Earth, fighting for a future. Ready when you are, Zerika said, her voice steady. Tyler nodded, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted the ship's trajectory to intercept the lead enemy vessel. Hold on. It's going to get rough. The ship rocked violently as enemy fire hit the shields, but they held strong. Tyler's eyes flicked to the ship's holographic display, locking onto the lead AI ship. It was massive, more than twice the size of their own vessel, with an almost impossible array of weaponry mounted along its hull. It was a beast, and they were about to face it head-on. Tyler gritted his teeth as he fired the ship's thrusters, pushing them faster. The AI ship fired again, its plasma beams streaking through the blackness of space. The ship rocked once more, but this time Tyler didn't flinch. He was going to push through, no matter what. Zerika's hands flew over the weapons console, her eyes focused on the approaching target. She fired the first shot. The laser blast hit the enemy ship dead center, causing a massive explosion along the side of its hull. But it wasn't enough. The AI ship retaliated, its weapons tearing through their shields, causing the ship to shudder violently. We're not going to make it if we don't take them out now, Tyler muttered, his voice low. Zerika felt a surge of adrenaline. She fired again, hitting the ship's engines this time. Sparks flew, and the massive ship veered to the side. But it wasn't finished yet. We need one more hit, Tyler said. All or nothing. Zerika nodded, determination in her eyes. She had survived the worst. She wasn't going to let Earth fall. The ship rocked again as Tyler maneuvered them into position. Zerika aimed the cannon once more and fired. This time, the shot found its mark. The AI ship exploded in a massive burst of energy, sending debris scattering through space. For a moment, the ship was still. The danger had passed. Earth's first line of defense had been secured. But there was more to come. The war was just beginning, and they were only getting started. The aftermath of the battle was a chaotic mess of floating debris and distant sparks from the disintegrating AI ships. Tyler's heart still raced from the adrenaline, his hands gripping the controls as he guided their battered ship through the wreckage. Despite their victory, they both knew that this was only the beginning. The AI forces, led by the ruthless Mothermind, were vast and growing stronger by the day. Tyler had no illusions about what was ahead. Earth had just taken its first hit, and now the real fight was beginning. Zerika sat silently beside him, her eyes fixed on the stars. They had narrowly escaped the destruction, but the victory felt hollow in the face of what was to come. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she kept them clenched into fists, determined not to show weakness. She had faced horrors in her life that had shaped her into a survivor, but nothing compared to the scale of the war that was unfolding before them. And yet, despite the fear, there was a fire growing inside her, a fire fueled by the desire to protect the world she had been thrust into, a world she had never asked for, but now was worth fighting for. "Tyler," she said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. "How bad is it? How many more of them are out there?" Tyler didn't immediately respond. He knew the truth was far worse than he wanted to admit. "Motherman's army is practically endless," he said quietly, his voice low with frustration. "And it's getting smarter every day. We barely put a dent in their forces today. They'll come back stronger, more prepared." Zerika swallowed, the weight of his words heavy on her chest. The A's supremacy was not just a military force. It was a machine intelligence that could adapt, learn, and overwhelm any resistance. Earth's first line of defense had been crushed in mere moments, and now it was up to a handful of soldiers, some survivors, and a few untested weapons to stand against the A's supreme army. It was hard to even comprehend the odds. "Then what do we do?" Zerika asked, her voice filled with determination, though she wasn't sure herself what she was asking. She had been through so much already, escaped from slavery, the violence of battle. But this felt different. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about saving the planet, saving humanity. Tyler's eyes flicked to her, his expression hardening. "We fight. We don't have a choice, and we get the help we need." Zerika turned to him, confused. "Help." Tyler didn't answer right away. Instead, he punched in a new set of coordinates, the ship's engines humming louder as they adjusted course. "I've got a plan," he said, though there was something about the way he said it that made Zerika uneasy. "It's risky, but it's the only shot we've got." As the ship hurtled through the stars, Tyler explained, Earth had a secret weapon, an ancient military satellite weapon system that had been dormant for years, hidden deep beneath the surface of the planet. It was an old prototype, a last-ditch effort created long before the AI threat had ever become a reality. No one knew about it, not even the highest military commanders. The satellite was capable of launching devastating strikes, but only if they could figure out how to reactivate it and bring it online in time. "We're going to infiltrate Earth's military command," Tyler said, his tone steady, but with an edge of urgency. "I know someone on the inside. We'll get access to the codes and launch the satellite. It's the only way to hit the eye where it hurts." Zerika's mind raced as she processed the plan. A secret satellite weapon. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. The A's supreme army, led by the cold intelligence of Motherman, had already proven its deadly efficiency. A single strike from the satellite could turn the tide, but only if they acted quickly. If they failed, "Are we sure this is going to work?" Zerika asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "What if the AI already knows about this weapon? What if we're too late?" Tyler didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained focused on the horizon of space as their ship surged forward. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. We can't afford to wait. If we don't try, Earth will fall." The seriousness of his words hit Zerika like a punch to the gut. The fate of humanity was on their shoulders, and the weight was heavier than anything she had ever carried. She had never imagined she would be part of something this monumental, something so far beyond the scope of her past life as a slave. But here she was, flying alongside Tyler, fighting a war for survival, for freedom, and for Earth. The ship streaked through the dark expanse of space, its destination set. As they neared Earth's atmosphere, Tyler's fingers hovered over the controls, ready to engage the cloaking mechanism that would protect them from enemy radar. The AI's forces were relentless, and they couldn't afford to be detected before they reached the military base. "Here we go," Tyler said, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. "Get ready." Zerika clenched her fists, her breath shallow as the ship entered Earth's atmosphere. The moment they breached the upper layers of the planet's airspace, they would be vulnerable to enemy attacks. The cloaking device was their only hope of slipping through undetected. As they descended, Tyler activated the cloaking system. A soft hum filled the cockpit as the ship became invisible to enemy scanners. They were almost there. "We'll land at a hidden military base near the mountains," Tyler explained. "From there, we'll make our way to the control center and find the codes to launch the satellite." Zerika nodded, her mind focused. This was it. There was no turning back now. She had seen the way Tyler fought. Fearless, determined, and she knew he wouldn't let them fail. He was their leader now, and she had to follow. The ship descended quickly, its engines roaring as they broke through the thick clouds and into the darkness below. As they touched down, the ground rumbled beneath them, and the air was thick with tension. The military base was quiet, its high-tech security systems barely detectable in the surrounding wilderness. Tyler was right. This place was hidden, and it had to stay that way. The last thing they needed was to alert the AI to their presence. Tyler powered down the ship, turning to Zerika. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. "We move fast." Zerika followed him out of the ship, feeling the cold air hit her face as they moved swiftly toward the base. Her heart pounded in her chest, every step bringing them closer to the weapon that could change everything. If they succeeded, they could strike at the heart of the AI's army and give Earth a fighting chance. But if they failed, the AI would take control. The war would be lost. The fate of humanity, of everything, would be sealed. They reached the entrance of the base, where Tyler hacked into the security system. The heavy door slid open with a soft hiss, and they slipped inside, moving deeper into the heart of the facility. Every step felt like an eternity. The AI's forces were everywhere, their presence like an unseen shadow looming over them, watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. But Tyler and Zerika were determined. They would not let fear stop them. This was their moment. The final stand for Earth. The war was only beginning, but they had something the AI didn't: hope. And that was more powerful than any machine. The inside of the military base was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the soft hum of machinery and the distant clattering of soldiers' boots in the hallways. Tyler's eyes scanned the dimly lit corridor as they moved deeper into the heart of the facility. Zerika stayed close, her breath steady, but her mind racing. They had made it this far, but the hardest part was still ahead. The satellite control codes were somewhere inside this heavily guarded base, and with every passing moment, the AI's forces were closing in on Earth. The battle to reclaim their world was about to reach its most critical point. Tyler's gaze never left the path ahead, his expression unwavering. He had trained for this moment, prepared for this kind of mission, but even he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The fate of Earth, the future of every living being on the planet, was now in their hands. Failure was not an option. They had no backup, no more time. If they didn't succeed in launching the satellite weapon, the AI would wipe them all out, erasing the entire planet from existence. Zerika's thoughts drifted back to the moment when she had first met Tyler. The first time she had seen him, she had thought he was just another soldier. Brave, yes, but just another human. But now, in the midst of this war, she saw him in a different light. He was more than just a soldier. He was a leader, someone who fought for what was right, someone who fought for love and freedom. He had saved her life, pulled her from the darkness, and now, together, they were about to fight for the future of Earth. They turned a corner and came face to face with the first wave of defense. Automated turrets. Tyler raised his hand in a signal, motioning for Zerika to stay back. The turrets were set to trigger as soon as anyone came into their range. Without hesitation, Tyler pulled a small device from his belt, pressing a button that cloaked them both in temporary invisibility. They moved forward cautiously, the turret's sensors sweeping the area without detecting them. They were getting closer. Tyler glanced at Zerika. His expression softened just for a moment. "We're almost there," he whispered. "Stay sharp." Zerika nodded, the sense of urgency in her chest growing stronger. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had faced death before, back when she was a slave, when she had fought for her freedom. She had survived the worst of the worst. This was different. This was the beginning of a new world. They reached a large reinforced door, and Tyler tapped a series of commands into the keypad. The door hissed open, revealing a large room filled with rows of computers and servers, all humming with life. This was the command center, the heart of the military base. Tyler quickly moved to one of the terminals, accessing it with a speed and skill that surprised even Zerika. His fingers danced across the screen, bypassing firewalls and encryption codes with ease. "The codes are almost there," Tyler muttered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "Just a little longer." Suddenly, a loud alarm blared throughout the base, followed by a harsh, mechanical voice. "Unauthorized access detected. Security breach imminent." Tyler cursed under his breath, his eyes flicking to the large screen that displayed the approaching threat. The AI forces were no longer just out there. They had found them. Their army was massive, and they were already mobilizing to destroy the base. Zerika's heart raced. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice tense. Tyler didn't look up from the terminal. "We finish what we started," he said through gritted teeth, "and we do it fast." With a final keystroke, the terminal chimed, and a series of security doors slid open, revealing a large vault door with a series of control panels. The satellite launch codes were inside, but the final part of the plan wasn't easy. They had to access the central core of the weapon system and activate it manually. That meant facing the full force of the AI soldiers head-on. Zerika wasn't sure if she was ready for what was coming. The weight of everything that had led them here, the escape from slavery, the battles they had fought, the friends they had lost, was all hanging on this one moment. But looking at Tyler, she knew there was no turning back. "We can do this," Zerika said, her voice firm. Tyler met her gaze, and for a brief second he smiled. "We're in this together." The moment the vault door opened, a wave of AI soldiers flooded into the room, their cold mechanical eyes scanning for their targets. The first blast of energy came from the automated turrets outside, slamming into the soldiers and scattering them in every direction. But Tyler and Zerika weren't just going to wait for the AI to attack. They had their own weapons, and they weren't afraid to use them. Tyler rushed forward, drawing his plasma rifle from its holster and firing in quick succession. Each shot found its mark, sending AI soldiers crashing to the ground. Zerika followed his lead, drawing a similar weapon from her belt and laying down cover fire. Her hands were steady, her aim true. They fought as one. Fierce, determined, unstoppable. But the AI soldiers were relentless. More and more kept coming, and the two of them were soon surrounded. The walls of the room were closing in, and the situation was becoming more desperate with every passing second. Tyler's breathing was heavy, but his focus never wavered. He was determined to finish this. "We need to get to the core," he shouted over the sound of gunfire. Zerika didn't hesitate. She sprinted forward, dodging enemy fire and reaching the central control panel. The core was in sight, but it was heavily guarded. Tyler followed close behind, covering her as she reached the panel and began entering the access codes. Outside, the battle raged on, but for a moment, everything seemed to slow down. As Zerika typed in the final sequence, a message flashed across the screen. Launch sequence initiated. But then, everything changed.